What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Clint. It's been a little while since we put a video out, and I'm going to tell you right now, we've been real busy. It all started a year ago, last April 2022. Me and the old lady went down to Uari, took Napalm and Grunt, and the old lady had some trouble getting her transfer case to go into 4 low. So when she brought it home, she was like, hell with it, we're done, let's build it. We had a lot of discussion about it, mainly how much we were going to build it, which way we wanted to go with it, so on and so forth. Finally, she just told me, build it like you would build it if it was yours. And I said, what's my budget? Let's just say I went over budget a little bit. After that, old Grunt was in the garage for about 8 months. The first thing I did was I pulled the transfer case. There was obviously something wrong there. Found out it didn't need a complete rebuild. The planetary and the gears, bearings, everything was fine in it. But the chain was so friggin' loose. It was so loose that it got down into the screen on the pickup tube for the filter, and it just was no bueno. So I put a new chain in it, and while I was in there, I also put the TerraFlex 2 Low kit in it. If you don't know what that is, basically what it does is it allows you to be in low range and 2-wheel drive. Nothing changed with the shifter or anything else. It's just like factory, the way you're looking at it. You got 2 high, 4 high, neutral, 4 low. Even though there's no indicator on it, pull up one more click and that's 2 low. The next thing I did was I got rid of the factory transfer shift linkage. Grunt's got a 2-inch body lift on it, and you TJ guys know that as soon as you put a body lift on a TJ, that linkage gets all jacked up and it really doesn't work well at all. So I ended up putting a Novak Conversions cable shifter linkage on it, and it's smooth as butter now. You can shift that thing with 2 fingers. Then we got into the meat of the build. First thing I did was I pulled the rear axle. Had the stock Dana 35 in it. We all know that's a piece of junk. Our original plan was to find some JK Rubicon Dana 44 pull-offs. 5 years ago, you could have got them for $2,500, $3,000 for the set. The cheapest set I found was like $5,500, and it was in Georgia. I was gonna have to go get it. Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna go that route. A friend of mine had a JK Dana 44 rear out of a Sport. Okay, not exactly what I wanted, but it'll work. We could not find a JK 44 front. Could not find one anywhere. So we ended up having East Coast Gear Supply build us a brand spanking new one. The rear that I got, cut all the brackets off of it, welded the truss and the new brackets on it, and then we sent it off to East Coast Gear Supply as well, because we initially wanted E-lockers. Couldn't get E-lockers at the time. I don't know why, couldn't get it. Let me rephrase. East Coast couldn't get the E-lockers. Now the reason that matters is because they were building our front axle brand new. So we ended up going with the ARB air lockers. Now, this is why we ended up sending the rear axle to East Coast. Air locker is a little bit different than E-lockers. It takes a different tool and a little bit different tolerances involved in it, and I wasn't comfortable with it, and my buddy that was helping me, he didn't have the tools either. So rather than go buy more tools that I was only going to use once, we got the rear axle all welded up, put together, and then I took it up to East Coast, and all they did was put the gears in it and the locker, and of course you got to drill the diff for the fitting for the airline. They did all that. So we got the axles back, 488 gears front and rear, ARB air lockers, chrome moly axle shafts front and rear. We did not do the RCVs on the front to start off with, because that was going to be about another $700 difference. So for what we had in these axles, we thought that was going to be good. I can always put the RCVs in later. The rears are fine. It's got the chrome mollies, but the RCVs is really what we want in the front. We're just going to hold off on it a little bit. Now, as far as the suspension goes, it had 2.5-inch springs on it. We opted to go with 3.5-inch springs. Why? because she was going up a tire size from 35 to 37s. So it just felt the 3.5-inch springs would give us the clearance that we needed. Now for the arms, we did custom long arms. We initially were going to go with the Barnes kit that just comes as a kit. All the brackets, the DOM, everything you need. Supply issues. There was something that Barnes just could not get, and it was like 4 pieces, and that was what was holding up the kit. I would check every couple days, and that kit was out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. So we opted, we were running out of time. We're running into, this is late July by now. So we opted to get the DOM from Barnes. We got all the bracketry from Genrite. We did get the Barnes transmission skid. What else? Oh, we got the Barnes engine skid, which I haven't put on yet. So we just had to go to welding brackets onto the frame, cutting all the frame stuff off. Got the rear axle in first, then came the front axle, kind of got it all lined out where we thought we wanted it, and then went to measuring, cutting DOM and making control arms. We triangulated the rear so there's no track bar in the rear, and we're not even running a sway bar, and you can't even tell it. Still got the same shocks that were on it previously, before we did all this work. They're Fox. I thought they were 8-inch travel shocks. Turns out they're 10-inch travel shocks. We also put the Curry anti-rock in the front. What else did we do? Oh, I had to replace the steering gear because my dumb ass, I was probably drinking. But anyway, when I was putting it all back together, you have to press that pitman arm back on the steering gear kind of in stages. You press it on, take the nut off, then put the washer on, tighten it back up, and torque it. My pitman arm puller wasn't doing any good, so I went and borrowed my buddy's, who's got a snap-on pitman arm puller. Put the 1/2-inch impact to that dude, and I forgot to take the nut off before I went to pull the pitman arm, and ended up cracking the sector shaft. So that was another $300 out of my pocket because I screwed that up. So Grunt's got a new steering gear. And that helped a little bit. It still had the factory steering gear in it, and it had some play to it. It's much better now than it was. Grunt was back on the road. It was either October or November. And by the time we got the break-in miles in on the gears, URI was closed, no time to do a shakedown run. And I still hadn't replaced the steering gear at that point. I didn't replace it till like February. And she was riding around with the front bumper off of it because I didn't want to put the bumper back on and take it back off. I mean, you can change the steering gear with the bumper on, but with it off, it made it a whole lot easier. So once I got the steering gear changed, got the front bumper and the winch and everything back on, she's ready to go. We flexed it out in my buddy's ditch, and the track bar is hitting the front diff cover. So we ended up bending the track bar. We put a 15-degree bend in it, and I'm about 78.4% sure it's going to solve the issue. But if it doesn't, I think if we change the front diff cover, put a different diff cover on it, that'll take care of it with the bend in it now. URI's been opened up for a couple weeks, and we haven't had Grunt down there. We're taking it this week to do its first shakedown run. And that's going to be all on video. We're going to cover the whole thing and show you guys any issues we run into or may potentially find. These 37s tuck up in here really well. Problem is, hits right here. It rubs. And the same thing in the rear, just rubs right on the back. I wanted to change the fenders out, but after the amount of money we spent, Mama pulled the reins back and said, hold on, let's just wait and see. Okay, I know it's gonna rub, and depending on how the articulation is and where her tires are, she may not be able to turn her steering wheel. Maybe that'll be the point. She's okay, fine, changes the fenders out. The rears, I'm not gonna have to change. I can just cut that. Maybe 3 inches is all I need to cut off the back side of the fender. Of course, I'll follow the line and try to make it look nice, but the front fenders, a couple of different options. Moto Built has a front fender kit. It's not a highline fender kit, but it gives a wider opening for larger tires, which is what we need, because like I said, the tire tucks up under or in the fender great. It's just where it's rubbing on the back side. The only problem with that is Motobilt, their outer fender does not work with the inner fender, and the TJ fenders, inner and outer, they're bolted together, but they come out and go in as one piece. So if we go that route, then all this crap you see on both sides that's bolted to the inner part of the fender has to come off, and then we have to put it back on the new one. Well, Genrite has aluminum fenders that you keep your stock inners and you just cut the outer off right along this seam here where the hood comes down. And I haven't done a whole lot of research. I'm not sure how it reattaches. You probably have to weld it, which ain't that big of a deal, but I really like the Genrite ones. I really don't want to take all this off and then have to put it back on. That's a bunch of crap. Another thing we did, we got air lockers. Obviously you have to have a way to get air to them. So we mounted the ARB dual compressor in the engine compartment. We used the Moore mounting bracket for that. So for the manifold right here, that's where the relays for the air lockers are hooked to. I had to fab up a bracket. Really wasn't that hard, but it kind of goes under and then bolts to the where the master cylinder breaks to the brake booster. Plenty of room there, and if I have to, it should be easy enough to move in and out. Don't know how well you can see that, but we also installed an S-Tech switch system. So you can turn her compressor on, engage one or both of her lockers if she wants to, and a couple other switches for rock lights and pod lights and so on and so forth. Another reason the videos have been slow in coming over the last year, not only were we working on Grunt in the garage, but we were planning a wedding. Let me rephrase. We weren't planning a wedding. My son and his now wife were planning a wedding, and they got married last October. It was a beautiful ceremony. Everything went off without a hitch, and we couldn't be prouder. But also, during the course of the Grunt build, Mama decided she didn't like all that cutting and welding and grinding and all that crap going on in the garage. So we built where I'm standing now, the shop. If you guys are thinking about building a shop and you come up with a size that you think is going to be perfect, scratch it, add 30 feet both directions. Then you'll have the right size shop. Because I thought this is a 24 by 40. I thought it was going to be perfect. Yeah, no, it got small real quick. The shop was done the week before the wedding. We didn't have anything in here at that time yet, so we had a place for people to come hang out. It worked out great. Then in February of this year, we had the spray foam insulation put in. There's about 5 inches on the ceiling and 2 inches on the walls. Then we came back and hung OSB 8 foot up just to put some protection, and maybe, hopefully, it would make people not want to stick their fingers into the foam. So the shop is still not done. I still have to wire it. Right now, all the lights and everything you see, I'm running 2 10-gauge extension cords from the house and a couple of power strips, and that's how I have my power out here right now. So I got to run power, then I can move my welder and everything in here. Then the shop will be self-sustaining, and there'll be no more stuff going on in the garage that makes Mama unhappy. It'll all be out here, and then she can stay in there and stay out of my ear. That's going to be it for this week's video. I'm going to video the shakedown run, so be looking for that. Hopefully in the next week or two, that'll be out. Y'all remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Till the next time, keep the shiny side up and Jeep on.